get my 6.
Greetings, everybody. Welcome back to Homesteading Off the Grid and whatever the hell this channel's about. Today, it's about a storm that's brewing, and I hope it's nothing like a small, isolated storm that seemed to brew under very strange circumstances here about 12 years or so ago. I will explain. First, speaking of storms, if you've been following the channel for a while, especially in the last few days, you know that my beautiful bride, Dearly, aka Giggly Girl, her favorite aunt and uncle's home was destroyed by Typhoon Odette in the Philippines a couple weeks ago, and in less than 24 hours, wonderful folks, wonderful viewers sent in what they could, and we have raised enough to rebuild that home. Dearly had a FaceTime call with her aunt last night. Her aunt had no idea this was going on, and I talked to her for a little bit too. She's dumbfounded. She cried, tears of joy. They still don't have power where she is. It took her like 3 hours to get somewhere to where there was like a generator supplying electricity so that she could even go into an internet cafe and FaceTime Dearly. They had to set it up a day in advance. She said that she's been crying and praying and crying and praying, and that I answered her prayers. I made sure that she clearly understood, no, I did not answer your prayers. God answered your prayers through me, through others. Okay? So this isn't about who gets the credit. The credit goes to the Almighty. Couple consecutive tree knocks there. Okay, so we're going to do this too, by the way. We told this lady, and it's not because we don't trust her, and it's not because we feel that anybody, you know, that donated doesn't trust us. We want to see the progress. We showed you the video footage of where her home used to be. It was leveled by Odette, and we asked her to just, you know, take pictures or some video footage as they, you know, build this home, put it back together, and it'll only take a matter of a few weeks, I think, for them to get it totally built. So I'm looking forward to bringing you that footage as they go along with reconstructing their home. And despite the fact that in 24 hours we got all we needed, people continued to send money. And there were some folks I didn't thank who had sent money to Dearly when she made the video on her channel about a week before. I even mentioned it a couple days ago. I ended up bringing it up because I saw she had made that that video, and I knew that we could overcome the shortfall because there's more of you here on this channel. So, but even after that, people continued to send. Gail Anderson, thank you very much. And then there is Lisa Kennett, Diane Richards, Carol Parker, Mary Stevenson, Andy Hill, Dr. Andy Hill from over in the UK, and Sherry Daniel. Thank you, all of you. And though the money was raised to build the house, this or any extra anybody sends is going to go to the stuff inside the house, furniture, simple appliances. They're going to have a nicer home with more modern stuff inside it. Like you know, they cook with wood. You know, if we can get a little gasol, they call it over there. It's kind of like a Coleman, not sponsored, camping type grill that you hook up to like a gas can, natural gas. We'll get that. Any extra will go to that. And I think it's wonderful that they're going to have it better after the destruction than they did before. What's this thing they're trying to get past here now? Build back better? I believe in that. As long as gas prices don't go to $17 a gallon. You got to find somewhere to meet in the middle. But government's not involved here. People are involved, the common man and woman, so it's going to be much more efficient and no waste. Because again, government doesn't have their greedy little fingers in it. You know, having to spend $250 on a hammer because of all the red tape you have to go through and all the different departments that need to approve the purchase of the, you know, the $20 hammer. So thank you. I mean, this isn't my tirade against inefficiency in government. This is about being grateful for those of you who did what you did. And this brings us to our story. The Philippines is an interesting place. They're on the Ring of Fire. They've always got earthquakes, volcanoes. It was a weekly event to just be sitting there in our house and just feel everything shake. Sometimes stuff would fall off the shelves, sometimes it wouldn't. But there's 2 rainy seasons a year. Typhoon season. Sometimes they get big ones, sometimes they get small ones, sometimes they're isolated. But I'd been there for a couple of years, living full-time without coming back here to the U.S. I've often talked about a guy named Ray that was my best friend when I lived over there. Okay, that didn't sound like a bird. That sounded like somebody talking, somebody screaming. So keep watching. In storms, we've got a winter storm coming here in Central Virginia. It's like 60 degrees right now, and I'm out here without even wearing a jacket. Feels great, but I guess around 1 a.m. tonight, it's going to start snowing. It's supposed to snow until 1 p.m. tomorrow afternoon. It's not going to be super cold, but they're calling for 4 inches. And had some really weird stuff going on with fog up here yesterday, and something back here behind me just like being there one moment and the next it wasn't. And the fog in particular is what reminded me of this story, this thing that took place in the Philippines 12 years or so ago, 10 years or so ago. I've been there a couple of years, and Ray from England, I'm out of touch with I've been out of touch with the guy. He would be 80 now if he's still among the living. Great guy, very wise. I learned a lot from him. He worked hard his whole life. He sold computer software, traveled the world in doing so. He came to the United States regularly to deal with tech companies. Retired, and his wife, with whom he had and raised 4 children. I'm like 2 years younger than his youngest child. Threw him out on his ear, said she wanted nothing to do with him, took one of his 2 pensions, and he decided he wasn't going to hang out in rainy old England the rest of his life and die of old age with the woman right down the road hates his guts, and some of his adult kids would talk to him and some of them wouldn't. So he went to the Philippines to live happily ever after. And that's exactly what he was doing. He had been doing it for a couple of years before I went there and met him, and he was still there doing it when I left, like 6 years later. He had a wonderful woman, a very beautiful woman. She was in her early 50s because Ray was in his early 70s. She was like one of the most beautiful women over 50 I've ever seen in my life. She very strongly, she looked a lot like Selma Hayek. You know her, gorgeous. But the problem was Letty had trust issues, and she was, well, I shouldn't have said her name, but I doubt she's watching. She had trust issues, and she was very controlling because she had a husband with whom she had 4 kids that were all grown, of course, by this time, who was just a man whore. I mean, he wasn't faithful. He would cheat on her all the time, despite the fact that she was absolutely gorgeous. And a wonderful person. She was a real sweetheart, and she stayed with him for the sake of the family until after all the kids were grown and gone, and then, of course, she got rid of him. But she carried the baggage of those trust issues with her, and she projected them on Ray, and it was so unfortunate. This is how bad it actually was. And she knew a lot of folks in where we lived, in the town we lived in. Ray and I would get together a couple days a week, and we would just go out and we would go for walks. We would go get lunch or dinner. We'd have some drinks on the beach, just really enjoying time. We had that Western, expat, even though he was from England, I was from America, and I'd been to England a couple of times, and like I said, he's been here a few times. We could just relate on a way that we couldn't with a lot of locals. But we'd go somewhere. Say we went to restaurant / pub ABC. And we're sitting there on the beach. We order some appetizers or something, a couple of cold ones. And within minutes, his girlfriend would text and say, "You and Kevin are at, restaurant / pub ABC." She always knew, and she wasn't following us. She just had so many people that she knew. And I guess if they ever saw her, English boyfriend out and about, they would text. It's called chismes in Visayan, or in the Philippines, the southern Philippines, which means like gossip. They also call it chit chat. It's like everybody up in everybody else's business. It's a really trashy thing. And not everybody does it, and it happens here too. Trust me, I'm from Appalachia. It happens here too. I've always just figured I had enough going on in my own life not to concern myself with the lives of others so much. I just mind my own business, you know. Seems like a pretty simple concept, but it's a concept a lot of people simply don't understand. Annoying neighbors, nosy neighbors. Hey neighbor, what you doing? How are you doing? They want to know what you're doing. What have you recently bought, so they can go one up you with something with a few more CCs or whatever. So whatever. It wouldn't really ruin our day or our afternoon, but it would certainly put a damper on it because Ray was very laid back, calm, very wise. He was one of these guys, when he'd talk, you just shut up and listen because you're always going to learn something, you know? It would always put him in worse off spirits, and then we'd end up going back, and him and his girlfriend would argue. And I give you my word, of all the times I hung out with this man for years, he never cheated on her, at least not in my sight and not to my knowledge. But she was just so obsessed, I guess, with having been married to a man for all those years, it was just cheating on her all the time. She just didn't trust anybody. And unfortunately, this ended their relationship. As much as he loved her, he broke up with her. And you know what? He did some really good things for her. He bought her a couple of businesses. I mean, he had means, he had money, and she really didn't when they met. Before he broke up with her, he set her up in business so she could take care of herself. He wanted the best for her because he did love her. But she had proven through her distrust and her control freak issues that he had to love her from a distance. He had to love her from afar. He had to let her go. He just had to let her go. It was heartbreaking. So anyway, they broke up, and he liked to travel. Actually, the first time I met him, I was in Manila, getting ready to come back to the U.S. after having not a very good experience my first month in the Philippines. Met him in the bar of the hotel, and I'd gotten taken advantage of. I'd gotten involved with a scammer, and her and her family had taken advantage of me. And I told him, I'm leaving this place. I'm never coming back. And he told me, he says, you know what, you got burned. What I will tell you is that people like the one that burned you are the minority. You hear the stories, it sounds like they're all like that, but it's not. It's just, you know, one guy or one if you have a bad experience, you're going to tell 10 people. If you have a good experience, you're not going to tell anybody. That's an actual fact in regards to business. So he said, give it another chance. I joined him and his girlfriend at the time. They were still together. And we went up to northern Luzon. I forget the name of the place. Spent a week just seeing a part of the country that I wouldn't have seen had I left. He convinced me to go back down to Mindanao with him. And if I'd never met him and I'd not said, okay, I'll give this place a second chance, I would have never met my beautiful bride dearly, aka Giggly Girl. Turns out he had known her for a couple of years, and he's the one that introduced us. So after him and his girlfriend broke up, there was a place in southern Mindanao, and I won't say the name of the town, that for security reasons, he wanted to visit. He'd always heard it was beautiful, and I'd always heard it was beautiful as well. So we decided we'd get together and we'd go for a few days, have like a breakup trip for him, you know. So we went down there by bus. It was about a 6-hour bus ride, and we got to the place, and there was a very secluded resort just outside of the town. It was a little bit pricey, but those were the types of places we would seek out because you didn't have to deal with a bunch of undesirable issues. You could pretty much be left alone. The people that worked at the place were respectful and called you sir instead of other things. And we figured, well, let's just spend a few days here. So we did. We checked in. We got separate rooms because we both just wanted we're grown-ass men, you know, especially him, retiree. We just wanted our own space. When we're hanging out, time was over, and throwing back some cold ones, time was over. We wanted to be able to go to our own rooms and have our space. So when we got there, the man that managed the hotel, a Filipino guy, probably in his late 50s, explained to us that only recently they had not quite a typhoon, but they feared there was going to be a typhoon because it was during the rainy season. Big storm had whipped up out there on the Bay of Davao, which flows into the Pacific Ocean. And it had uncovered a bunch of debris, and he explained how this was common with these storms, and you've seen it here. I know anytime there's like a major hurricane on the East Coast, sometimes they'll uncover ships like down on the Outer Banks that had been buried by sand for centuries. Happened just a couple of years ago. Well, something similar to that had happened just around the bend from this resort. So he said, if you go walking that way, be careful. He was talking about there was an old, not necessarily a Spanish mission, because remember, Spain occupied the Philippines for 333 years, but there had been a Catholic church, circularly built, that nobody had even, it didn't even know it was there, but the storm had uncovered part of its foundation only days before this. So we said, okay, we'll be careful if we go that way. And of course, Ray got excited. He is a student of history. Again, I would just listen to this guy talk. He'd go on and on and on. And I would just learn and learn and learn. Better than any college professor I ever had. Just his knowledge. He thirsted for knowledge and he loved to share it. And I'm one of those people that loves to have it shared with me. So he says, we're going to go over there first thing. We still had plenty of daylight left. It wasn't late. And he says, who knows what sort of treasures might be laying around, something that has been buried for centuries that just got unburied from this storm. So we moved our stuff into our rooms, just went out to the beach, beautiful white sand, crystal blue waters, not a lot of people. Again, it was kind of a pricey place. We just take off walking down the beach around the bend, and we clearly got off of the resort's property, and we got into the local barangays, and people were wonderful. They were being friendly. They were saying hi. That was about the only word they could say in English. Very secluded place in southern Mindanao. But I spoke Visayan and Ray spoke Tagalog, so we would talk to them in their language. And we asked them, where's this church, this ruin? And they're pointing over this, but they're saying, no go, no go. And we're like, whatever, We're not superstitious to any degree. We want to see, what would the stones the thing was built with look like after being buried by sand for 200 years? Long and short of it is, we make our way to the old ruins, and we found the stones, and so we're just moving them around. And we thought, how unfortunate. Like, if there were archaeologists that were knowledgeable of this place, they could come here, just dig through all this stuff, figure out the era, the period. They'd probably know the style of the cutting of the stones. It was like, but this happens commonly, and this place is so remote. I'm sure by now it's been buried by the sands of time again with another storm. So we're looking at the base, and I found a crevice that looked like a little cubby hole where you might hide something, and I stuck my hand in there. I know, it's crazy, especially if you've seen that movie Flash Gordon. Remember that? The thing bites you. And I pulled out some sort of like metal case, bent and rusted, but it had a lid on it, like a metal box. And I took the lid off, and inside this box, there was what appeared to be a dog whistle. So whistle looked like a dog whistle, and there was some water and some sand in the box. I handed it to Ray, and I said, what do you make of this? And he's looking at it, and he says, it looks like a whistle, looks like a dog whistle. And it had some letters on it. It appeared to be Latin. I didn't speak Latin. I don't speak Latin. Ray didn't speak any Latin. I think I just heard thunder. So anyway, and by the way, I do have water. So I take this whistle, and it had sand in it and water, so I'm shaking it out, and I'm shaking it out, and I'm shaking it out, and I'm blowing on it. And I know, I'm thinking, well, germs, disease, plague, whatever. This thing's been here for hundreds of years, buried under sand. I'm sure whatever might have been on is worn off of it. I keep blowing, nothing's coming out. Get everything out of it. Blow and I blow, and it didn't even make any sound. And Ray says, well, that must be it. It must be a dog whistle. And I was like, did dog whistles even exist back then? And he said, I don't know. And so we figured we'd Google it. We never did. And so I blew it one more time, and I'm looking at Ray, blow as hard as I can, and behind him, I can see down the beach. I can see the water, I can see the sand, and just as I blew that whistle, and I was bringing it down from my mouth, and this is why I thought of this, because of what happened here yesterday. It's like, it was a clear day, it was sunny, there was still plenty of daylight left, but I saw what seemed to be like a mist or a fog just forming on the beach. And I'm staring at it. And Ray, I think that he thinks I'm seeing like a really beautiful Filipina woman coming down the beach. So he turns around and he sees it and he goes, well, looky there. What is that? But then the thing seemed to take on form, almost human-like form. This is the best way I can describe it. This is going to sound crazy, but have you ever driven by a car lot? Okay, I clearly heard what sounded like a tree knock and then footsteps. Okay, so have you ever driven past a car lot and you see those blow-up puffy guys? They're like these long, tubular-looking guys, and they got faces, and they got these big arms, and they go like this in the wind. I think you see them for Halloween decorations, Christmas. It looked like that. It's like this fog formed into one of these things, and it's doing this, but then it starts approaching us. It appeared to be running towards us. Now, mind you, it was a long way off, but it was just weird. And Ray said, perhaps we should be getting back. And I said, perhaps we should. So we turned around, went back up, made it to the resort, drank a lot of cold ones that night, and talked about what, I had the whistle, I kept it with me, and we talked about the strangeness of the fog. And he explained about how, the temperature shifts, a cold breeze could come in, and you just never know what might happen with weather. It's the strangest thing. And we agreed it was nothing, pretty much. We went back to our rooms well after dark. I couldn't sleep. I have sleep issues. I have since the war, and the slightest sound wakes me up. And I remember in bed, almost asleep, and the wind picked up from out of nowhere, and something banged up against the wall outside of my window. I went to the window. It was the limb of a tree, nothing serious. But I looked out and I noticed that it was a clear night, no clouds. The moon was full, so I could see the beautiful sea. I could see the beach. It was just a gorgeous sight. And right there by the window lay that whistle. So I opened the windows. It's Philippines. It's hot all year. At night, it actually is a nice temperate temperature. It's redundant. Hearing like what sounds like a howl back here. Keep getting my 6. Hear it? So anyway, I grab that whistle and I blow. And I'm looking down at the ocean or the sea and the sand, and sure enough, I see this formation of the fog happening again. And I'm looking, I'm like, no way, this isn't happening. What would be the odds? It's too coincidental to be coincidence. And again, it's like the thing by the car lots or the things you see on people's lawns on Halloween or Christmas doing this, and it appeared as if it was coming at me. Now, I didn't know what was going on, but I made sure to shut the windows and latch them, and I went back to my bed, and I laid there, and I don't think I slept much that night. So the next day, I was telling Ray about it, and he's like, maybe we should get rid of that whistle. I'm like, are you serious? We found an old dog whistle buried under some old Spanish Catholic church ruins that had just been uncovered by a storm in the the southern Philippines. This could be worth a fortune. Of course, the American in me, I'm seeing dollar signs, right? And he says, you know what, Kevin, some things just aren't worth it. Some things just shouldn't be messed with, and this whistle might be one of those things. I said, yeah, okay, well, I just won't blow it anymore. Kept it in my pocket. We hung out at the beach all day, had far too many cold ones, ate too much food, but we were, it's not that Ray got over his girlfriend instantly, and he hadn't instantly forgot her, but he was having a really good time. After we retired that night, went back to our rooms, our separate rooms, similar thing happened. At some point in the middle of the night, I was awakened to a sound outside, got up, looked out, still a very clear night, another clear night. The moon was out, and well, I just couldn't leave well enough alone. So I grabbed the whistle and I blew it for all I was worth. And this time, the formation of this fog was right outside the window. It was like right there, and I swear the thing, had a face, but it wasn't a face. Let me explain to you what the face looked like, okay? It's right there doing this in front of me. And have you ever seen, and I'm not trying to be mean or inappropriate, but have you ever seen like a man, like a big man that's really, really obese and like has like all these fat rolls on the back of their neck? That's what this thing's face looked like. It's going like this, and its face looked like fat rolls, and it comes in the window and takes me to the ground, and I'm screaming and I'm flailing. I'm like, oh my gosh. Ray comes running into my room. I guess I didn't even lock the door or something. And I'm like covered with my bed sheets and a blanket. So he's grabbing these things, pulling them off of me. And I come to and I tell him what happened. And he says, you know, the only thing I can think of is you had a very lucid dream. You dreamt that you blew this whistle out the window, and you know, fell out of bed having this nightmare, and maybe you were partly awake, you were partly asleep, and you saw your white linens and your white blanket, and that's where this image of a, you know, fat man's fat rolled neck as a face came into play. He says, but Kevin, we got to get rid of this whistle. He says, it's bringing you more harm than any good it could do. I'm going to take it down there right now to the beach. I want you to watch out the window, and I'm going to throw this thing into the sea. I want you to see me do this so you'll know I did indeed get rid of it. And this is nonsense. We got, you know, a couple more days of this trip left, and we're going to have a good time before we go back. We didn't come here to be haunted by, you know, an evil whistle. I said, okay. After that, and I figured, well, he's right. It was a dream. It was a lucid dream, and I was in the bed having this nightmare and got all wrapped up in my sheets and all this. So he left. He went out of the hotel, and I watched him walk across the very beautiful lawn down to the beach. He was standing on the beach, and I could see him clearly. I mean, it was night, but like I said, the moon was still full, not a cloud in the sky. He goes like this to throw this thing into the sea, but he hesitates. And he turns back around. He looks up to me and he waves it around and he goes like this. And he blows and he starts waving. He's laughing. And he was a considerable distance away, but I could still hear his laughter. He's thinking, oh, you're, you know, big dummy. You're superstitious. And look at this. This is nothing. Well, I happened to notice 20 yards away from him, the mist, the fog, the formation of some freaky thing that looked human-like. If humans did this on the side of car lots to get your attention as you're going down the interstate. And I yelled, Ray, Ray. And he's laughing, and he sees me pointing, and he looks over. Now, had I had a dream? Was I hallucinating? Au contraire, monsieur. Ray's eyes got as big as saucers, and he turned around and he threw that whistle out into the sea as far and as hard as he could. And the minute it hit the water, the fog vanished. That white, foggy thing that was, boom, it was gone. Ceased to exist. And I saw Ray turn and look back exactly where I'd seen it and where I know he had seen it. He saw that it was gone. So he came back up to the room. It's creepy just even thinking back on this. He goes, there, we're rid of this problem now. I said, did you see that thing down the beach from you when you blew that whistle? And he said, I may have seen something. I said, come on, Ray, you may have seen something. He's like, I may have seen something. Or perhaps I may have had a bit too much to drink this evening before going to bed. And he walked out, left my room. I did go back to bed, and I did sleep the rest of the night. And the next morning over breakfast, he said, I think it would be best if we go back to Davao. That was the city where we lived, down in Mindanao. And I said, we have a couple days left. He says, well, I just think it would be best if we get back. I was like, okay. I knew why he wanted to go back. He never admitted to it because he was very cool as a cucumber. Cool, calm, collected. But he felt as if we needed to get out of there while the getting was good. I agreed with him, and we did. So again, storm's coming your way. Hope you make it through it. I'm sure you will. As long as you don't blow any dog whistles as the storm's coming in. See you for more next time.